Okay, so today we're going to go over the second portion of the algebra and functions part of the Accuplacer exam. I know a lot of people have the next few days that are off, and I know that this part of the test can seem complicated, but I just want us to approach this in a very chill manner. I want us to feel comfortable with these problems, and I want to make them as simple as possible. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over problems number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 together in this video. And we're just going to take each problem one at a time. We're going to explain it as best as we can. But again, it's going to be not as intimidating once we go through each of the problems. So as always, make sure you have your notebook and your pencil ready. And let's get started with problem number 6. So problem number 6 says, which of the following is a graph of a function where y is equal to f of x? So it's just asking us about functions. On your piece of paper, you should write the best, most important rule of a function is that for every x, there's only one y. So for every x, or for every input, there's only one output. So if you have a function and you put in the number 4, there should only ever be one answer that comes out. If you put in the number 10, there should only be one number that comes out every time. If you put in the number 20, there should only be one number that comes out every time. But these are graphs. So how does that rule reflect in graphs? Well, you should be able to make a line straight down the graph. And that line should only go through the graph at one point. So this line goes through at 2 points, 2 points, and 2 points. So this does not satisfy the rule that for every x, there's only one y. In this case, there were 2 y's on every line. So the way you test this out, again, is just putting some straight vertical lines up and down. And if it's a function, it will only go through one point of the line. But in these lines, they go through 2. They're going through 2. So because they go through 2, they are not satisfying that rule that every x only has one y. Okay, what about what about the third one, C? 1. Okay, so this only has 1 point on the line, 1 point on the line, 1 point on the line, 1 point on the line. So this is potentially the answer. Why? Because when you make a vertical up and down line, it only goes through the graph at 1 point. That satisfies the rule for every x, there's only one y. But let's go ahead and check this D graph. So let's go ahead and, okay. So this only has 1 and this only has 1, but here there are 2 points. So it does not satisfy the rule for every input, there's only one output, because in this vertical line, there are actually 2 outputs. So the only possible answer could be C. So Miss Amber, what do I do when I get a problem like this on my test and we're given a graph and we need to know which one is a function? All you have to do is make a vertical line through the graph, and if there's only 1 point on the graph that it goes through, then it can be a function. But if at any point there are 2 points on each vertical line, then it does not satisfy the main rule of the function, which says for every x, there's only one y. Very simple, very easy. All right, problem number 7 says, which of the following expressions is equivalent to 3x squared plus 6x minus 24? So if you look at the answers, A and B, you see that they're taking out a factor and then they're factoring the rest of it. They're factoring. So what we have to do is we need to factor this trinomial. And the reason why I'm telling you what we're doing is so that in the future, if you need more problems like this and you don't find them on my page, you can always type into YouTube or into Google, factor trinomials, and you can get more practice. So this is what we're doing. We're factoring a trinomial. What does that mean? Well, in the same way that we would factor the number 6 and 12, which means what numbers can you multiply to get 6 and 12? You could do 1 times 6, 2 times 3, 1 times 12, 3 times 4, 2 times 6. These are all factors of 6 and 12. So if you look at the numbers 6 and 12, which factors are common to both? Well, they both have the number 1, they both have the number 2, they both have the number 3, and they both have the number 6. Out of those numbers that we circled, which one is the greatest common factor? Well, the greatest common factor, or the highest number, would be 6. So if I were to factor the numbers 6 and 12, I would divide them both by the greatest common factor, and I would be left with 1 and 2. We're going to do the same concept when it comes to this trinomial. We're going to look at each one of these pieces, and we're going to say, what is the greatest common factor? What is the greatest number or value that can go into each one of them? Well, this can be divided by 3. This can be divided by 3. And negative 24 can be divided by 3. So 3 is the greatest common factor. So what happens when we take out the 3 and factor it? So 3x squared divided by 3, the 3's cancel out, and you're just left with x squared. 6x divided by 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2. The x is left over. And then negative 24 divided by 3, negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. Okay, so what we did was we took out the greatest common factor, and then we divided each part by 3, and this inside is what we're left with. But if you look at these answer choices are broken down even further. So let's go ahead and try to break down this trinomial on the inside. How do we go ahead and do that? So we're going to go ahead and bring down the 3 and make 2 parentheses. Now we're trying to break down x squared plus 2x minus 8. How do we do that? Well, we need to First, let's break down the x squared. The way we break down the x squared is by putting x and x. Then we have to find 2 numbers that when you multiply, you get the last number. So when you multiply, you get negative 8. But when you add them, you get the middle number, which is 2. So 2 numbers that when you multiply to get negative 8, but when you add them, they get 2. So, what about 4 and negative 2? 4 and negative 2. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, good. And then 4 plus negative 2 is 2. So that works out. So 4 and negative 2 go in the parentheses. So our final answer with this trinomial all the way factored is 3x plus 4, x minus 2. Now these two can be in either order. So which answer would that be? It would be x plus 4, x minus 2 with a 3 on the outside. Our answer would be B. Now you may be saying, whoa, Miss Amber, I feel a little bit lost. And I completely understand if you're feeling lost. It's because I had to break down every part of the question so that you guys can understand it. But now that you kind of understand why I'm doing each part of the question, I'm going to go ahead and kind of like rewind, but fast forward in a way that I'm just going to put all those steps together in a less wordy way. So it's going to be 3x squared plus 6x minus 24. I see by my answer choices that I have to factor this trinomial. So I'm going to factor it. The greatest common factor of these 3 are the number 3. So I'm going to divide each part by 3. 3x squared divided by 3. The 3's cancel each other out, and then I'm left with x squared. Put the 3 on the outside because that's the number that I factored. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. Bring down the x. And negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. Now I'm going to go ahead and break this down even further. I need to find 2 numbers that when you multiply, they equal negative 8. But when you add them, they equal positive 2. And that would be 4 and negative 2. 4 and negative 2. So we break down the x squared by doing x and x. And then we add 4 and negative 2. And this is our answer. But it's always good to know that these two can be in either order. It could be x minus 2 and x plus 4. And that is the same as answer B. If you need help factoring trinomials, I'm going to put the link to my video where it's an easy trinomial factoring trick. Once you see that video, it's only like 3 or 4 minutes. Once you watch that video, it's going to be so easy for you to factor trinomials from then. It breaks it down in such a simple and easy way. So go ahead and watch that video if you feel like you need more practice. So let's go ahead and go to problem 8. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm so happy that you're not giving up. Okay, so problem number 8, I'm just going to tell you guys from the beginning. This is an exponential function. The reason why I'm telling you the name of this is so that if you need more practice with these types of problems, you can go ahead and go into YouTube and you can type into YouTube exponential function, or you can type into Google exponential function, and you can find more problems that are similar to this. So it's good to know the name or the type of problems that we're doing so that you guys can continue studying even if I don't have extra examples. I should have some more examples of these, but if you need to find even more than that, then go ahead and use that exponential function title. Okay, so it says, a biologist puts an initial population of 500 bacteria into a growth plate. The population is expected to double every 4 hours. Which of the following equations gives the expected number of bacteria N after X days? And then they're reminding us that there's 24 hours in a day. So when we're talking about exponential functions, it's usually saying y is going to be equal to the initial times the rate, and then t is going to be an exponent. Initial means what is it starting off as? So it tells us what the initial population is 500. So now we know is y equals 500, then there's going to be a rate, and then there's going to be a time. Okay, then the rate is telling us that it doubles every 4 hours. So the rate is doubling. So when you double something, on the side of your piece of paper, I want you to write this. When you're doubling it, you're timesing it by 2. When you're tripling something, you're timesing it by 3. And when you're quadrupling something, and I'm not going to spell that out because I don't want to be embarrassed. If you're quadrupling something, you're multiplying it by 4. So again, since we're doing y equals the initial rate, the initial population times the rate, 2, is doubling, and then we're going to figure out what the time is. So now it says it's every 4 hours, but we have to be very careful to not just put 4 as a time. Why? Because they want to know how much we're going to have after X days. They want us to know after X days, not X hours. So then we have to say, okay, how many 4 hours are in 24 hours? So I would do 24 divided by 4 equals 6. So there are 6 hours, there are 6 periods of 4 hours in every day. So instead of just putting 4 for the time, we're going to put 6, 500 times 2. We're going to put 6, X. Okay, so why did I put X? Because it's going to be after X amount of days. So if they said after 5 days, I would do 6 times 5, and I would just put 30 for the time. But because they're not telling us how many days that's going to be, they told us how many periods are in a day, and then they tell us that it's going to be per day, but that they don't give us an exact amount. We just have to write it as 6x, meaning there's 6 periods of 4 hours in each day, and x is going to be written for the days because we don't know how many days this is going to be. So our equation is going to be 500 times 2, and then as an exponent, 6x. So we're going to go ahead and see what satisfies that equation, and the answer is going to be B. Okay, so I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to give you another for instance. So say the question says this. Say the initial population is 300. We're going to say that it triples every 6 hours. And the same question is going to be, how much after X amount of days? So we're going to go ahead and write N is equal to the initial rate, the initial population, times the rate, and then the time is going to be the exponent. So the initial population is going to be 300. The rate triples, so we're going to multiply by 3. Every 6 hours, so 6 hours, but we're talking about days. So 24 divided by 6, there's 4 periods of 6 hours in a day. So we're going to use the number 4. And because we don't know after how many days, we're just going to write X days. So if it was after 3 days, we could just do 4 times 3 and then just put 12 as the exponent. But because we don't know exactly how many days, we have to represent that 4 times X. So our answer would be N is equal to 300 times 3 with 4X as the exponent. Remember, 300 is the initial population, 3 is the rate, and then this is the amount of time that passes. Again, this is an exponential function if you need more practice. I can also give you some extra practice problems. You guys just have to let me know what it is that you need, but just let me know how you're feeling about this. Now, we have a few more problems to continue on with. Please don't give up on this because the more you practice, the more you do it with me, the easier it will become. I know that I'm explaining everything in great detail, but I have to do that because I know a lot of my students, they haven't been in school in a very long time. So it wouldn't be fair just to rush through things just so I can use the least amount of words, because then some people would still be confused. So please bear with me. And if you like the way I teach, please let me know. All right. So problem number 9 says, which of the following values of X satisfies the equation above? So it's X squared plus 5X minus 9 is equal to 5. So we're trying to find the value of X. So we're just trying to solve. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and put this 5 on the other side. We're going to bring the 5 on the other side so that we can factor it as a complete trinomial. So right now the 5 is positive. We have to do the opposite. So we're going to subtract from both sides. And we're left with X squared plus 5X minus 14 is equal to 0. We can just drop the equal to 0. And now we just have X squared plus 5X minus 14. Let's go ahead and factor this trinomial. So we're breaking down the X, and X. And as a reminder, we need two numbers that multiply to get this last number. Multiply to get negative 14. But we need two numbers, the same two numbers need to add to get the middle number. So we need to add to get positive 5. So 7 times negative 2 is negative 14, but 7 plus negative 2 is 5. So the answer is plus 7 and negative 2. But we're not just factoring this, we need to solve it. But in order to solve it, we had to factor it first. So the way we solve this is by setting each parentheses equal to 0. X plus 7 equals 0, because remember this was equal to 0. But X minus 2 is equal to 0. So let's go ahead and solve each one of these equations. So in order to solve this equation, we need to get the X by itself. Right now, the 7 is with the X, so we have to subtract 7 from both sides. Now X is equal to negative 7. Now to get this X by itself, we need to add 2 to both sides. X is equal to 2. So X is equal to negative 7 or X is equal to 2. So now we just have to see which one says either negative 7 or positive 2. The answer would be D. So just as a reminder, if we are given something like this that says what value of X, that means you're solving it. But because we see that it is going to be a trinomial, you had to make this trinomial, 5x minus 9. You had to make it a trinomial by subtracting the 5, x squared plus 5x minus 14. You had to factor the trinomial, x and x, plus 7 minus 2. You had to set them both equal to 0 in order to solve. and you got x is equal to -7 and x is equal to 2. All right, so I'm going to give you another example just in case that was confusing for you. So what if we say x squared x squared plus 10x, and then okay, x squared plus 10x plus 16. So I would break this down, x and x. So we need two numbers that multiply to get 16, and they add to get 10. So I would do 8 and 2, 8 and 2. So I would put 8 and 2, and then I would set them both equal to 0. And then I would subtract from both sides, x is equal to -8. And then I would subtract 2 from both sides, x is equal to -2. And my answer would be either -8 or -2, and I would see which one was in the list of answers. So it's very simple once we understand how to factor trinomials. And again, if you need more practice factoring trinomials, please see my other video where I show you guys that very cool trick. Just practice the trick, just watch the video, and you guys should feel more confident when you're factoring. Okay, problem number 10. So we only have 2 more problems left. So go ahead and hang in there, you guys. So problem number 10 says the graph of y equals f of x is shown in the xy plane below. Which of the following equations could define f of x? Okay, so I just want to show you guys that in standard form, it would be ax squared plus bx plus c. So the equation of this line in standard form would be ax squared plus bx plus c. A, b, and c, they're just all numbers. So say, for example, it was like 10x squared plus 5x plus 15. A is 10, B is 5, C is 15. So they just represent different numbers in an equation. Now, when you see a happy face of a graph, and that's what we see here, a happy face of a graph. You can even make the happy face. A happy face of a graph, that graph looks a little creepy. A happy face of a graph, that means A is positive. If you see a sad face of a graph, then that means the A value is probably a negative number, like -5 or -2 or just -x. So if we're looking at this graph here, the first thing that we should be able to identify is that this first part of the graph should be positive. So we can just go through these. Because this is a happy face graph, A should be positive. We should just go through these 3 equations and say which ones have a negative for the first input. So this is not going to be it because that's negative. And then here's a negative here. So that's not going to be the answer. So our answer is going to either be A or C. So now we have to look at the graph and we have to see what the graph is telling us. Wherever this graph goes through the x-axis, so this is the x-axis, wherever the graph goes through the x-axis, which is right here and right here, those are the solution to this function. So it goes over x is equal to -2, and then x is equal to 4. So these are 2 solutions to this function. So we now have to see out of this choice and this choice, which one will have -2 and 4 as answers. So let's go ahead and look at each of these equations. X squared minus 2x minus 8. We have to factor it first before we can solve. So we're trying to find 2 numbers that multiply to get -8 and add to equal -2. So I'll do -4 and 2, -4 and 2. So it'll be x, -4 plus 2. And then we have to set these both equal to 0. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. X is equal to 4. Subtract 2 from both sides. X is equal to -2. So does that match this? Yes, one is -2 and one is 4. So this first equation satisfies it. Let's go ahead and check out the second equation to see if by any chance that one satisfies it too. If it does, oh no, we have a problem. So we have x minus 2, x plus 4. We set them both equal because they're already factored. We just set them equal to 0. So we add 2 to both sides. X is equal to positive 2. X is equal to negative 4. Nope, because we need negative 2 and positive 4. So that is not the answer. So our answer is going to be A. So we went through a lot of details about this. And again, we're going through things as if we're going through them from scratch and you guys have no background in it. I know some of you guys excel in math and you guys are going to do great with these types of problems. You can go ahead and fast forward to problem number 11. But for those of you who don't remember how to do functions and they saw this problem and felt intimidated, it's totally okay because it's been a while. Some people haven't been in school in a very long time. So what I need you guys to remember is that anytime you see a function and it's a happy graph, then the first value has to be positive. That's how we eliminated 2 out of the 4 equations because this wasn't positive and this wasn't positive. Then we just factored both of them and solved. So factor and solve, factor and solve. And we knew that they had to either be x equals negative 2 because that's one of the points on the x-axis, and x is equal to 4 because that's one of the points on the graph on the x-axis. So very, very simple as long as you understand the basic concepts of functions. Wherever this graph goes through the x-axis, those are 2 of the points on the graph, or those are 2 of the solutions. All right. Well, let's go to problem number 11, and this is going to be our last one for this video because I know we're taking in a lot of information. You guys are doing so very well. So it says, which of the following best describes the range of y is equal to negative 2x to the 4th plus 7? So 2 words that we need to know is range and domain when we're talking about functions. Range just means the y values. Domains are the x's. This is something that you have to memorize because math is a language. If you understand what they're asking because you know the language, the problem then becomes easier. So they're basically asking you, when you make this graph on a chart, or when you make this graph, what is going to be the y's? Where are the y's going to fall on this graph? So let's go ahead and see if we can plug in 0 for x. And the reason why we're going to put in 0 for x is because we want to find the y-intercept. And as we discussed in my previous videos, the y-intercept is 0, a point. So if you put in 0 for x, you can figure out what the y value is going to be. So put in 0 for x to see what the y is equal to. 0 to the 4th power is 0. Negative 0 is just 0. 0 plus 7. Y is equal to 7. So 0, 7, that is the y-intercept. Okay? But then, before we go any further, y is equal to negative 2x to the 4th plus 7. We learned that anytime this a value is negative, remember, anytime that a value is negative, it's going to be a sad face. So this y-intercept is going to be at 0, 7, and everything else is going to be below it. Everything else is going to be below it because it's a sad face. So this is going to be the maximum point, and all the other points are going to be below it. So if we go ahead and just try to draw a graph on top of this, this is going to be at 7, that's 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then that's 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is the y-axis. And that's what we're asking about. We're asking about the y's. So the maximum is going to be either equal to 7 or less than 7. It's going to be the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. So when they ask you what is the range of this going to be, because we know that it's a sad face, and because we know the peak is at 0, 7, and everything else is going to be below y equals 7, so we can say y is going to either be less than or equal to 7. Because it's either equal to 7 or it's going to be less than because the arrows are going down. Again, the way we found that is we plugged 0 into this equation for x. We were able to find the y-intercept. because we're asking about the range, we were able to find the y-intercept. We knew that this is the maximum point because it's a sad-faced function. And we were able to see that if this is the maximum point and everything is lower than that, then all the y values are going to be lower than the 7. So it's going to be equal to or less than 7. So that is y is less than or equal to 7. The last thing I'll show you is that some people, they need a little bit practice with this greater than or less than symbol. And they're like, which one is which? I grew up in Florida. Well, I grew up in New York and then Florida. So if you guys are doing it with the alligator eats the bigger number. So if the alligator is facing a number, it's showing that that number is greater than. If the alligator is trying to eat a different number, that means that number is less than. So when we said y is less than or equal to 7, the reason why we're saying the word less than is because the alligator doesn't want to eat the y. It wants to eat the other number. So y is less than or equal to the number 7. All right, you guys, that's all the breath that I have for you guys today. Stay tuned because I'm going to go over the next problems in the test, problems number 12 through 20 in the following video. Happy studying, you guys. I hope that this helped you. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something new today. If you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you guys want to stay tuned for more videos. Thanks so much and have a great evening. Bye, guys.